And here we are, we're live again. Welcome in, everyone, to the Dynasty Force podcast. Back again here with my good pal tonight, Billy Brisbane. Billy, how's the UFC betting going? Because I know that's going on for you right now. I wouldn't be surprised if mid pod I hear the screech of someone winning or losing and losing you a ton of money.
Oh man, I hopefully Poirier can pull out the W tonight, but we cashed out on a plus 198 underdog in a UFC second fight in his career. So it's a pretty good start. Hopefully, I can end out the night pretty well, make up for some of these golf losses this week. Had a bad golf week this week, first bad week since the restart, but it's bound to happen.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, I was really bored this week, so nothing else to do. I actually decided to watch some golf, and it turned out to be women, so it wasn't anything to write home about. Not to say that women's sports in general are anything
Oh
less.
man,
Well, we can
don't
talk
say
about
that.
that in another episode. Um, I do love women. I think they
I
uh.
hope you do love women.
I have a fiance. She does her own.
I
She's a
hope she
big
doesn't
tennis
listen to the
player.
pod.
Oh no, definitely. She might
Uh,
tune in for a quick second, and of course she'll probably be that second that she tunes in. So we are here tonight. Tonight, I actually just got back home from a trip to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Amish country. I got some. You probably can't see it right in this. Oh yeah, you can. Old-fashioned homemade root beer. This is actually disgusting root beer because it has yeast in it for some
Ew,
reason.
yeast in root beer? Isn't that like what you find in beer?
I
I don't
think
like
it is.
root, man. The
I
more I
don't
talk,
know. It might
whew,
be. It might just be. And if it is, whew, I mean, it has like sort of a minty taste, which is just kind of weird to relate to root beer. But anyway, all right. So I wanted to make some quick announcements here, real quick. First, of all, this podcast was kind of random. Obviously, we're here now because we were going to have the fantasy forecasters on tonight, but Trey, the host, fell asleep, so we just decided to run our own little pod here from the Dynasty Force because why not? We had everything set up. But as far as plans for the season, um, not this next upcoming week, but the week after. So let me look at my calendar real quick because I just want to get these dates right for everyone. The week of July 5th is that Sunday. I plan on having a little midweek episode, maybe like 15 minutes long, trying to have that posted on podcasts everywhere where I'm just pointing out some sleepers or some values or some busts that I personally like. Just a little quick hitting midweek episode so that you can see, um, kind of get more content and see where I'm coming from on a lot of the guys and a lot of the opinions. Billy, I know you personally, like, I'm going to be talking about people that I see in values as far as the draft and everything, but mid season, you have plans for DFS.
yes, sir. Definitely gonna expand on the DFS wave. For NFL, you're definitely gonna see a lot of Dynasty Force information coming out. Probably have a couple live videos throughout the week talking about DFS plays and ownership. Um, give people. I'll probably have like a YouTube vlog series. I started it back in the day a little bit when I was in college, but definitely coming back with the vlog series for DFS.
Definitely. And, I am 100% interested in following that because I do not know DFS nearly as well as you do. So uh, I'm trying to learn just like everyone else is. And, I hope everyone else is just as interested in learning as I am. So we are ready now. We're just going to start getting into this episode. Billy, I want to ask you our quick question, our main first question here right off the bat. after this question, we're going to get into some sleepers for the 2020 NFL season. I know that's what you all want to hear because, where can you find the value? Where can you go in drafts? That is going to be a major help to you later on in the season. So, Billy, let's start it off real quick. Which rookie wide receiver will be the best in the 2020 season? There's a ton to choose from here. Henry Ruggs was the first wide receiver taken off the board by the Oakland Raiders, or I'm sorry, now Las Vegas Raiders. He seems to have a pretty clear path to get onto the field. Beyond that, Jerry Jeudy, he's the clear number two wide receiver now behind Courtland Sutton. So what are you thinking here as far as which wide receiver will be the best in their opening season?
Even though it was a pretty deep wide receiver class this year, I don't want to sound like a homer, but I feel like Jalen Reagor is going to have the best rookie wide receiver season just because he has the quickest path to getting on the field out of the rest of the wide receivers. I feel like, not saying that other players like Justin Jefferson, Michael Pittman, stuff like that aren't going to get on the field. I just feel like Jalen Reagor has a chance to solidify a good target market share compared to the rest of the wide receivers in this class. And that's why I think he will have the best season in 2020.
Now, what do you think about Coach Doug Peterson's comments? This is speaking off the top of my head. I could pull it up. It's a lot of work. So I'll try and talk off the top of my head at first. But I believe he said that Jalen Reagor is just basically going to be training for the Deshaun Jackson role, and he's going to kind of be riding the bench and learning behind these guys preseason. And then when the season begins, he's kind of going to have to earn that trust to earn a role with the team. Obviously, they spent a first-round pick, but they don't seem like they're in too big of a rush in order to get him on the field. How do you feel about that one?
As much as that quote may be accurate, I don't think Doug Peterson's going to have a choice when it gets to week 4 in the season. And Alshon Jeffrey's hurt, Deshaun Jackson's hurt. And as you could see last year, we're throwing anybody and everybody out there. We had undrafted
Greg Ward.
Greg Ward was our best receiver last year, and he was an undrafted rookie wide receiver.
Right.
So that just shows the upside of what a wide receiver can walk into. And now a wide receiver draft capital. The last person that we've seen in this somewhat type of role was Nelson Aguilar. And as much as Philly fans want to hate on him, he did have a productive couple seasons to start off Carson Wentz's career.
He did. Jordan Howard, or I'm sorry, not Jordan Howard. Jordan Matthews had his moments with Carson Wentz as well. So hopefully he and Reagor can establish that connection. Just want to give a quick shout out, Detroit Beastie on Twitter, checking in here, saying, "Hey,
what up?
I hope you all know that this Wednesday we will be having our regularly scheduled Dynasty Force podcast." And we will be having Detroit Beastie, Chris Robin on the show. And we are going to be talking about, I can't remember, I think Bus. Bus is the topic for that episode. So it's going to be a lot of fun, going to be a great episode. Tune in then on Wednesday, and you will catch Chris Robin here live instead of just checking in via comments.
See, I can't wait for our fans to listen to him because he's a person that's done just fantasy football for so long. So he has definitely unique, interesting takes and different type of trends that he's noticed throughout the years of him playing fantasy football. So I think it would be really insightful for our listeners to catch a little bit of his cliff notes going into their draft.
I've seen some of the notes that he has already for our episode on Wednesday, and it's pretty impressive already. Like I'm interested in hearing a lot of it. Some of them are pretty. I'm not gonna say guessable, but they're pretty well known. But I still obviously love to hear those arguments. But then other ones are like scorching hot takes, and it's like, whew, I'm not sure I'm ready for that one. But we're gonna have to endure on Wednesday. So for my answer to this question, which rookie wide receiver will be the best in 2020? I think I'm gonna have to answer with CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. And my reasoning is that, yes, he will not be the immediate, starting number 1 or number 2 wide receiver for this team. Amari Cooper is established and already on the team. Michael Gallup is established already on the team. They both went over 1,000 yards last season. They both had fantastic seasons. However, there is enough room for 3 wide receivers in this offense to eat, especially with Mike McCarthy coming in and the kind of offense that he ran in the past with Aaron Rodgers having 3 wide receivers. At that time, it was Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and James Jones. Those 3 having success. There's a ton of vacated targets here available for CeeDee Lamb available. Randall Cobb, I think, got 83 targets last season. So if we're just assuming that CeeDee Lamb will get 83 targets, he can easily turn that into 50 catches. And, one of the things that we love most about CeeDee Lamb coming in was yards after the catch. Well, not only that, but also think of the fact that the defenses that Dallas is going up against are going to find it really, really, really hard in order to cover not only Amari Cooper, but also Michael Gallup, but also CeeDee Lamb. Meanwhile, CeeDee Lamb has arguably, Carson Wentz for Jalen Reagor, but arguably the best quarterback among rookie wide receivers here. We have, let me just go off the top of my head, Henry Ruggs has Derek Carr. I'm not interested in, that sort of connection. Jerry Jeudy has Drew Lock, who, we kind of expect big things from, but he's unproven. Justin Jefferson has Kirk Cousins, but it's going to be a low volume passing offense. So, how much can we really expect out of them? I mentioned Carson Wentz and Dak, and they're kind of on the same level. But then beyond that, Brandon Ayuk has Jimmy Garoppolo. Michael Pittman has Philip Rivers, and that's probably the next best one after those 3. So the way I see it is that these 2 wide receivers, Jalen Reagor and CeeDee Lamb, I think the path's a little easier for CeeDee Lamb, at least immediately. It will probably become easier for Jalen Reagor as the season goes along, but for immediate purposes, I think CeeDee Lamb's going to be on the field a lot. It's going to be easier for him because he's going to be the 3rd target in this offense, but he's still going to have plenty of opportunity, and his talent alone will make him a fantasy relevant option early on.
Can I add on about
Of course.
CeeDee Lamb a little bit? The one thing I kind of like about CeeDee Lamb a little bit more than like a person like Jalen Reagor, I feel like, is Jalen Reagor is the type of person that you have to project. You know what I'm saying? A lot of his comparables, he doesn't really have a lot of comparables to the NFL. So we really haven't seen a player like him in the NFL yet. But I feel like CeeDee Lamb can fit in floor wise exactly what Randall Cobb did last year. Randall Cobb had 55 receptions for 828 yards, and he was top 10 for yards per target. And I can just see CeeDee Lamb fitting into that same exact role as Randall Cobb, but taking more advantage of just being a better player and just squeezing out, juicing out just a little bit more yards. And he can potentially hit 1,000 receiving yards his rookie year under 80 targets. That would be absolutely ridiculously good for him.
Right. AJ Brown sort of season from last year. And then, from there you could, if you're in Dynasty, you could honestly just sell CeeDee Lamb for multiple first round picks and you're immediately getting a huge investment back. So that was it for our immediate quick question. Which rookie wide receiver will be the best in 2020? Billy answered with Jalen Reagor. I can see the opportunity for success for Reagor coming in. And then for me, CeeDee Lamb, I think he's going to get out on the field immediately. He has a great quarterback, great situation. So those are our answers. Now we're going to get into the main segment. Segment of the show, sleepers here. And I'm going to kick it off here. We're going to talk about a quarterback who I think is being extremely, extremely underrated as far as the fantasy season in 2020. Now, most leagues are 1 quarterback, and you are just going to be easily able to stream off the waiver wire for these situations. Even in Dynasty leagues, you can probably get this guy dirt cheap. I'm talking about the cheat code himself, Tyrod Taylor, quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers. And he's called the cheat code for a reason. It's because he's not a great NFL quarterback. Um, he had 2 seasons, 2.5 seasons kind of, as a starter for the Buffalo Bills before they kind of sort of went to try out Nathan Peterman. And then that he was, I guess, one of the worst quarterbacks to ever touch an NFL field in that time. And they kind of had to stick with Tyrod, and they went to Cleveland, and he was not pretty good for 2.5 games before Baker came in and lit things up, and then he took a backup job in Los Angeles. He is in line to be the starter for this Los Angeles Charger team, which, by the way, has Keenan Allen at wide receiver, Mike Williams on the other side, Hunter Henry at tight end, Austin Eckler out of backfield. They have Justin Jackson and Josh Kelly, who will be on the field as well, out of the backfield, running in between the tackles. So this is not going to be the same situation as Tyrod had in Buffalo, where what was his number one target, Kelvin Benjamin, and it's just not the same. Like Tyrod has weapons here, and while we're gonna, I'm still not projecting Tyrod to be, I don't know, Pat Mahomes through the air. I don't think that of him, but I think it's not out of the realm of possibilities for him to have about 3,200 yards and 20 touchdowns through the air. And when you factor that in, combined with his rushing yards, which he's bound to get, if he has a full season, he's easily getting 500 rushing yards, probably coming around 4 or 5 touchdowns. And at that point, Tyrod Taylor can easily finish as a top 10 quarterback because rushing is so overpowered in fantasy. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, but they drafted Justin Herbert raw, and why would they commit full season to Tyrod Taylor? Well, first of all, their coach Anthony Lynn has talked him up so many times. The 2 years that Tyrod Taylor was the full-time starter in Buffalo, Anthony Lynn was the offensive coordinator in Buffalo. He thinks that Tyrod is a legit franchise guy. Not
Yeah,
only
if there's
that,
one person that believes him, it would definitely be that guy.
it would definitely be Anthony Lynn. Not only that, but also the Chargers have an incredibly easy opening schedule. I will pull it up really quick, but it is one of those schedules where when you look at it, you can easily see them like starting off hot. And if they do start off hot in that sense, then it's kind of going to be hard for them to just turn around and be like, well, maybe we should turn to Justin Herbert now. So looking at their schedule, they start off against the Bengals, the worst team in football last year. Then they go against the Chiefs, which will be a tougher matchup. But then after that, the Panthers, who have a terrible defense, the Buccaneers, who a lot of people expect for a more improved team, but the defense still has a lot of questions. The Saints, that's a tougher one, but then the Jets, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Raiders. So a lot of those games just give Tyrod an opportunity to show himself and show that he can be an elite fantasy option in that time. And you can get him for nothing right now. And, every time that Tyrod is a starter, he's really relevant for fantasy because of the rushing floor. So, Billy, I have no idea what you think on Tyrod. Tell me what you think, at least for this season. I'm not saying Dynasty, I don't have a ton of
Tyrod's a
expectations.
weird guy to really assess because his profile really does hit the sneaky fantasy type of upside, as you alluded to. His rushing floor is so safe. For fantasy purposes, though, I think I just have to downgrade everybody for the team. Not a thing against Tyrod, but Tyrod is more of a conservative game management type of quarterback. And he's more of a guy that I think I'm going to pass on in Dynasty because I think there's more upside in other quarterbacks that have longer lifespans. But he's definitely a guy that I think that will have some bye week fill in spots, will definitely show up on a millionaire DraftKings lineup once this season or something like that. Some random 1% play. But Tyrod will definitely be a guy that I will keep my eye on throughout the season through waiver wire columns, because you just said the king to quarterbacks in football, especially in Dynasty, is just having a good rushing floor.
Right, definitely. It honestly will just add so much value. Now, Billy, you have a quarterback sleeper here. Would you rather him than Tyrod for the upside?
Yes, 1,000%.
All right.
1,000%.
I will allow you to explain why, because I think a lot of people around the world would most likely trade your player for Tyrod straight up and think that that was a steal.
I would doubt that, man. It depends on what part of the country you are moving to, because I know a lot of people up in Boston, and they're pretty high on him. And one of my Boston guys sold me on the player that I'm about to talk about right now, Jared Sittenham, quarterback of the New England Patriots. First things first, let me say this: every starting quarterback in the NFL has value in superflex leagues. Quarterbacks go off the board so early and often throughout the parts of drafts. The only competition for Jared Sittenham this year is Brian Hoyer, who has more experience than him but has a way lower ceiling upside wise. The Pats didn't select the QB in the 2020 draft, and they haven't a notable veteran throughout free agency. There are guys out there in free agency, for example, a guy that I thought that they would sign would be Case Keenum, who ended up backing up Baker Mayfield. Um, it would
Cam
appear that
Newton.
they're very confident in Jared Sittenham's chances of being a competent player this year. With a healthy offensive line and decent weaponry around him, I think Jared Sittenham could be a value quarterback this year. A lot of people have this team projected to run the ball a lot in 2020 without having Tom Brady, but I think this team will be in more passing game scripts than what we're all used to seeing from the historical Patriots. So I think Jared Sittenham could be somewhat of a sneaky value in Dynasty as a quarterback 3 bye week fill in type of guy.
I can respect that. Just to be positive, Stidham is his last name.
Sitting
You were
sitting.
saying more like a Sittenham.
I'm
Um,
sorry, man.
yeah,
Couple
it's all
drinks,
good.
couple
I respect
UFC
it.
fights, man. You start slurring off on some words a little bit.
I know what you mean. We've all been there. Look, um, my question for Jared Stidham is the same that it kind of was for Tom Brady, and it's what do you have around you? We haven't really seen much from N'Keal Harry last season. Beyond him, yes, we know Julian Edelman's going to be great, but then you have two rookie tight ends. I don't expect a lot from them, especially this season. You have they lost Philip Dorsett. I mean, Mohamed Sanu, hopefully he's healthy. I haven't
I
heard much
mean,
about
man, this
him.
sounds this sounds like the same thing that we say about the Patriots every year, year in and year out. Who are these guys that we never heard of? And then some random Joe Schmo guy from the practice squad turns out to
I'm
be your
hoping
wide
it's Jacoby
receiver.
Myers.
Yeah, that's
Hoping
what
it's
I'm saying.
Jacoby
So
Myers.
I'm never gonna try to A, get into the mind of Bill Belichick, B, doubt Bill Belichick. Um,
Good luck
so
with that if you are.
yeah, that's not in the business that I'm in. So I'm just gonna draft Jared Sittenham. Hopefully, he just turns out to be the Patriots quarterback for years to come.
I can respect that. Look, for the cost, he's
For
definitely
the
worth a
cost, it's
shot.
free.
He's basically free, even in startups.
I mean, I've
Um,
seen people draft Jameis Winston over Jared Sittenham, and I love Jameis Winston as much as the next guy, but uh, you have one person that's going to start right away, and you have another person that might be the starting quarterback of a team 2 years from now. Like, it doesn't make
yeah,
sense.
exactly. All right. So we're gonna head into running backs now. We both kind of have similar arguments here for our running backs. I think I'm gonna lead off. We can get into a little debate about this because I know you don't agree with me, but we're gonna talk about Chris. Thompson, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So let me give you a sort of timeline. Number one, coronavirus impacts everything more than you expect that it will. And I believe that to be fully true because teams are not going to be able to get onto the field together until what, the end of July? That's a whole nother month from now. And then they're expected to combine and practice for a month and then get on the field for actual play. It's you know, teams have built trust with players for so long, for years now. They know what they're getting in certain guys. I made this argument for rookies a few, I don't know, months ago on my Twitter. I basically said, I just think the path for a lot of rookies is going to be harder. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, for example. Like the team trusts Damian Williams. The team knows what they're getting in Damian Williams. So, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is, instead of having 3 months to 4 months originally in the offseason to compete and, directly show the coaching staff himself that he is great and that they should trust him, he's getting 1 month. And, sometimes, a lot of times, rookies don't even go into the season, still having that starting role. Like, for example, let's just talk about Kareem Hunt. He wasn't going to have that starting role. Yes, it's a difference of, a first round pick and a third round pick, but Kareem Hunt was going to be behind Spencer Ware, who's not. I mean, even at the time, he wasn't very good. Beyond that, I'm just talking about Andy Reid backs here. LaShawn McCoy was a second round pick and couldn't get on the field his rookie year behind Brian Westbrook. Brian Westbrook, his rookie year, second round pick, couldn't get on the field behind Deuce Staley. Just kind of, going back here. And that's just with the Chiefs. That's just one example. Here's another example of how it works. Jacksonville has a new offensive coordinator in Jay Gruden, right? Jay Gruden, former head coach of the Washington Redskins, 7 years now, or 7 years it was. And then before that, he was the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati. So here's the thing. The team made two sort of significant moves to bring in talent that Jay Gruden had worked in before. Tyler Eifert was the number one. They signed him. He's never healthy, but when he was on the field for that one season, he was on the field last season, was kind of irrelevant, but before in the past, I can't even remember what year it was, but he was very relevant the one season he could stay on the field. And the other one was Chris Thompson, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I just feel like people are just going by it, and they shouldn't be doing that. Like, they shouldn't just brush over Chris Thompson. They're like, oh, well, it's Leonard Fournette's backfield. He's just going to be the guy. Well, first of all, the Jacksonville Jaguars have no commitment to Leonard Fournette beyond this year. And it's well known that the team, the front office, the coaching staff are not fans of Leonard Fournette and his attitude. Jay Gruden, on the other hand here, is a guy where in his 7 years in Washington, I think 5 or 6 of them were spent with Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson and Jay Gruden had the established bond that has been talked about before, and that bond is going to go a long way. Like, Jay Gruden trusts Chris Thompson. He has no connection with Leonard Fournette. The team has no connection with Leonard Fournette in the sense of, like, he's our starter, yes, but they don't have a connection with him to be their future, franchise running back. And when push comes to shove, the Jaguars are going to be losing games. Doug Marrone, the head coach, his job is going to be on the line, and they're going to want to win, so they're going to want to put the best players out on the field. Now, Leonard Fournette last season averaged 6.9 yards per catch on his 76 receptions. Chris Thompson on 40 receptions, which was over 6 games. So, by the way, that's 7 receptions a game, which would have put him, let me do the math real quick, on a quick pace of 112 receptions, so it would have been a lot more than Leonard Fournette. But he was averaging 9 yards per catch, which is over 2 yards per catch more. So I just feel like, and this Jaguars team, like surprisingly, I tell people like, well, I just expect them to be worse, and they're like, oh, well, it's hard for the Jaguars to get worse. Well, last season when Leonard Fournette played, they were 6-9, which is actually not bad. This year, I would be surprised to see them win more than 3 games with the talent that they've lost on the defensive side of the ball, their lack of investment on the offensive side of the ball. Really, all they did was sign Tyler Eifert and Chris Thompson. So, in those situations where Chris Thompson, I really believe he will take over in third down and late game situations where they have to play catch up. Chris Thompson, I don't think it's out of possibility for him to see a similar target level that Leonard Fournette saw last season. And for the price that you can get Chris Thompson right now, if he is, he's not going to be someone that's going to go out and score, I don't know, more than 20 points in a week. But I think he's a lock for between 10 and 15 on a weekly basis. And at the running back position, that can be pretty valuable to have as a running back 4, which is about where you can get him right now. Maybe even later than that, depending how running back heavy you go earlier on. Billy, I know you don't agree with me.
Can I drop the other foot about Chris Thompson that you so did not mention about?
Go ahead.
Oh man, let me read into this because I don't know if you do anything for injury projecting for season after season after season, but
I can't do that because
I mean, there's people that are doctors that have websites for NFL players, so I just trust them. But man, Chris Thompson's injury history almost makes you wonder why he's still playing football. A fractured right tibia cost him the final 6 games of 2017. 2 years prior, a torn labrum, a back bruise combined to claim 3 games. He also finished his rookie season on the IR with the same injury and also dealt with the same ankle, back, and toe issues in the pro. Thompson's college career featured a 2011 vertebrae fracture and then a left ACL injury tear the following season. Before 2017's injury, however, I'll give you credit. He did look good, but for running backs that are projected to get injured for next season, Chris Thompson has a injury percentage of 57, which is astronomically high compared to where everybody else is at. And 57% chance of being hurt. He will not be on my team this year.
So here's the argument that I can make as far as that.
Bro, the kid has 15 injuries in his
First of all,
resume. That is not good. He 15, should not be playing football. He needs to think about a different career and switch up his lifestyle.
So here's the thing. First of all, there's a ton of people that have a ton of injuries over their career and still continue to go out there and compete. Like, I'm not going to say Leonard Fournette has the amount of injuries.
They're not even comparable because they're 2 different age ranges, and Leonard Fournette hasn't even reached the peak of his ceiling yet.
All right, so hold on. First of all, let me say this. Chris Thompson is currently the running back 64 in best ball drafts off the board, being drafted in the 18th round. So he is going undrafted in basically all redraft leagues because most of them are 16th rounds and you need a defense and a kicker. So he's going undrafted in most leagues. And then in best ball, like I said, he's basically just a shot in the dark. So, like you were going to say Raquel Armstead.
I mean, I wasn't going to really touch on him too much on this episode, but I mean, they just have so many different names and different people in that backfield that I just don't want to getting into who's about to be not Derrick Henry, who's about to be Leonard Fournette's handcuff. Like, I don't want to get into that.
But it's not a handcuff situation.
It's not a handcuff situation, but TJ Yeldon was in the same exact role and he was never fantasy relevant.
Well,
and
first of all, I
he
don't
played
think
more
T.J.
than,
Yeldon saw 100 targets in the season, which I
but he
think is
played like 40 to 50% of snaps one year of his one of his years in Jacksonville. So it's definitely,
it is different quarterbacks though. Like Gardner. Gardner has shown that he's ready to check down.
I'll give
So
you that.
so I mean, look, all I'm saying is that Chris Thompson, if he can stay on the field, then he's a value for where he's going right now. And if he can't stay on the field, what are you really losing? You're losing an
Yeah, I feel
18th
it.
round
He's
pick.
free.
Yeah,
You're basically releasing him as soon as he does bad or gets hurt, or you can put him on an IR spot.
right.
I can
Exactly.
understand.
Yep. All right, so we're going to move on here. Billy, another running back who probably will not get the lion's share, but will get the receiving work.
The running back that I'm talking about tonight is Tariq Cohen. In 2018, Tariq Cohen was a borderline RB1, finishing as RB11 in PPR leagues. But however, it was an inflated production, just backed up amount of influx couple games. This past year, he took a step back for real, and he was a RB27 in PPR leagues. Everybody was projecting his role in the offense to grow, and he would come back as a fringe RB1. Um, but he actually caught more passes last year, but his yards per catch went way down from 10.21 to 5.77. He took a step back in touchdowns as well, as he had 8 touchdowns through the air and through the ground, all the way down to 3 touchdowns combined. His purpose yards fell from 1,169 yards to only 669 yards. The funny thing about Tariq Cohen is that we saw his absolute worst floor in 2019, but the year before was his absolute best ceiling in 2018. So I think his real value is going to fall somewhere in between the middle, which is a value where his ADP is at, considering where the running backs that he's going around. I touched about this on the other podcast the other week, talking about how to find RB breakouts, and he definitely fits the mold of being an RB breakout. And with Taylor Gabriel gone, I think people need to stop looking Tariq Cohen as just a third down back, because he's going to line up in the slot a lot more than what people realize. With Taylor Gabriel gone, wheels up for Tariq Cohen and also Anthony Miller.
Yeah, I know Taylor Gabriel did. I'm sorry, Tariq Cohen did line up in the slot a decent amount last season. Here's the thing for me. In Mitchell Trubisky's mind,
I
Tariq
don't think
Cohen.
Mitchell Trubisky is the starting quarterback week 1.
Well,
That's the
this was
first
actually
problem.
going to be and this was going to be an argument for Cohen, because I was watching Bears games last season, and Mitch Trubisky seemed ready to throw to Tariq Cohen at any moment. Like,
Dude, he's ready to throw to anything so he doesn't get released.
my problem was that he wasn't ready to throw to David Montgomery, like, at all, and you could see that in the target totals. I want to look it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure Tariq Cohen. I know for a fact Tariq Cohen had over 100 targets. Um, but
That's a lot of targets, Rob.
it's a lot of targets,
I
and
don't think he
for
had over
the
100.
he definitely did, because I know I've seen plenty of times so far that he has been
I'll check it
the
right now.
only back in the
Yeah, you're right.
NFL.
He had 104.
Yeah, the only back in I don't know how many years, but to finish with over 100 targets and not be a top 20 running back. So that's a reason that people are trying to invest in him. On the opposite side, David Montgomery had 35 targets. David Montgomery, who we kind of expected to be a pass catcher in his own right. So, yeah, that just shows you, like, Mitchell Trubisky was ready to throw to Tariq Cohen, but not necessarily eager to throw to David Montgomery. Now, if I can't tell you Nick Foles' tendencies. I mean, they're obviously scripting plays for Tariq Cohen and to try and keep him involved. So I could definitely see him trending back up, maybe not being a high end sort of guy, but he'll definitely be relevant for fantasy. I still have the best ball ADP up right here. Let me check it out real quick. Tariq Cohen is the running back 42 off the board. going in the 12th round, late 12th round in drafts in best ball. And at that price for a guy who you can all but guarantee is going to be involved in the receiving game on an offense that should improve with Nick Foles, I think he's a great sleeper to have. All right. So this next one, we're gonna head into some wide receiver sleepers. I want to lead off with a little story, and I'll admit this may be a bit of a, I guess overpricing, whatever, on my end today. But I went out and bought this man in a Dynasty.
Oh man, you're
for
gonna get ripped up for even bringing this on the podcast.
And guess what? I don't care. I traded D.D. Westbrook and the first round pick. Now, theoretically, I'm competing, so hopefully it's a late first round pick. But those two in return for Emmanuel Sanders, the sleeper that I'm going to bring up now, because, like I said, I got ripped up for this one in a ton of in the chat earlier, but I have to justify myself here, and I just feel like the
fireworks in the
reaction that
background,
I did not hear. I heard a little,
I was
like
gonna
maybe
say
something dropped.
the fireworks in the background, man. They're definitely with you on this take.
Thank you. I don't know who it is lighting them up, but salute, because listen. All right, so let's talk about Emmanuel Sanders. Yes, he is older, so his lifespan in the NFL is probably not going to be, much longer than if this year, the year beyond that. But here's the thing. Emmanuel Sanders in 2018, I have it up. He was hold on, I have to do some quick counting here. 3, 6, I'm sorry, 9, 12.
Wondering pre-show why you put Emmanuel Sanders on a show sheet, but now it makes sense.
He was
roasting you in this group chat that we're in with the other forecasters.
Yeah. He was the wide receiver 18 in points per game in 2018. And he played only 12 games, but this is points per game, 16.5 points per game. That's a really strong average. And at that point, he's 31. Last season, if you remember later on in the season, last season, he came back from an Achilles tear to play 17 games. He actually did play the full season because he was traded midseason, didn't get the bye week. For Denver, who had at that point Joe Flacco, who was favoring Cortland Sutton downfield, and then when he was traded midseason, he went to San Francisco, who had a lower volume passing offense with George Kittle, and then Deebo Samuel had a great run during that time. So Emmanuel Sanders wasn't necessarily needed. However, now Emmanuel Sanders, who the talent is still there. Emmanuel Sanders is still one of the best route runners in football. Emmanuel Sanders still has great hands. He is like Michael Thomas.
I was going to say Michael Jackson, man. That's a bold statement.
Michael Jackson, he is Michael Thomas. Not even in a disrespectful sense to him, but I think Emmanuel Sanders is talent-wise arguably a top 20 wide receiver in the league, and Michael Thomas is a top 3 wide receiver in the league at worst. So, this isn't a take of, well, Michael Thomas isn't going to get his, like Emmanuel Sanders is going to eat into his targets or anything. First of all, I think it's kind of hard for Michael Thomas to repeat 180 targets like he did last season. But even if he does, Drew Brees will still most likely throw at least another 300 passes, at the very least. So you have the clear number 2 target in this offense as Emmanuel Sanders. And I know a lot of people have pointed to the fact that, well, they haven't had a great number 2 option, or they haven't had a relevant number 2 option for years in fantasy because Drew Brees just throws to whoever is open. While this is true, you look throughout the years, it's been since 2016 since the New Orleans Saints have had two really good wide receivers on the same team, Michael Thomas and then teammate Brandon Cooks. And Brandon Cooks that season finished as the wide receiver 10. And Michael Thomas finished as the wide receiver 7. Yes, this is 4 years ago, but I think we can all agree it's the same Drew Brees, the same offense from
Same
Sean
offense,
Payton.
same offensive coordinator, basically the same exact amount of people, just more targets to Alvin Kamara. I can understand what you're saying.
Exactly. And like I said, it's not like I'm saying that Michael Thomas isn't going to get his, Alvin Kamara is not going to get his, Eric Cook's not going to be great around the red zone. But I think that people are just kind of thinking that, well, Emmanuel Sanders is old and he's not going to be the clear number 2 wide receiver. And, Traquan Smith is suddenly going to still have a role. Christian Kirkwood, these irrelevant guys that Drew Brees would find. Drew Brees would find these guys out of necessity. But now you have a guy who's been paid to come in and be the number 2, and he has been great for years. And like I said, he came off the Achilles tear to still have a very productive season last year. Billy, look, here's the thing. I'm not saying that Emmanuel Sanders is a top 20, or I'm sorry, a top 15 wide receiver. This is a very deep year for the wide receiver core. However, I would not be surprised if he finishes there because I believe in the situation that he's in. And at that point, I'm 100% willing to take the sort of shot where, like I said, I traded D.D. Westbrook, who, in my opinion, is kind of a throwaway at this point,
Yeah, he's
and
a
a
waiver
late first
wire
round,
candidate.
right, and a late first round pick for a guy with top 15 upside. At the very least, I think he's going to be a top 25 wide receiver. And
I
this is
kind
a
of
three
like
wide receiver league with 2 flex spots. So that's very, very relevant, especially for a competing team.
I
Billy,
kind
I
of
would
like
love to hear
what
your
you
thoughts.
did with the Emmanuel Sanders move. It's because it's like a hedge against a bet of Jared Cook repeating the same exact numbers as he did last year. Because if Emmanuel Sanders can eat into some, if he can get that wide receiver 2 baseline, beat out Traquan Smith for that job, and then eat into that target market share of Jared Cook, he can definitely produce himself a top 40 season. And we've already seen that in Emmanuel Sanders' career with way worse situations than the one that he's in right now,
Right.
which could arguably be the best in his career.
Yeah. Who was Denver's quarterback in 2018? Can you tell
I
me that off the
don't
top of your head?
want to.
Was it Case?
I
It was Case Keenum
I
slash
want to say Emmanuel Sanders benefited from. I'm not about to start sounding like
exact.
I'm
So
retarded.
and he was the wide receiver 18 in that season
This is the best situation that he's been since
since he's been
Pittsburgh.
with Peyton.
Nah, I would say
Peyton.
Pittsburgh.
Peyton, come on. And right now, wide receiver wise, Emmanuel Sanders in best ball leagues is the 47th wide receiver off the board. He is a 13th round pick. Another sort of throwaway pick there, where, like I said,
Another.
I think he's going to be on the field nonstop. I think he's going to see a ton of targets. I think he's going to be very relevant for a good offense. Billy, we're going to talk about another wide receiver here. We debated all last season, not necessarily you and me, but the whole industry debated who is the wide receiver 2 in Green Bay, and you're calling your shot right here.
Yeah, heading into 2019, Alan Lazard was just happy to make the 53-man roster. As the season went along, he emerged as the clear number 2 to Devontae Adams, beating out Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Geronimo Allison, and Jake Kumaro. Despite his short 10-game season, Lazard finished second on the team in air yards, yard per targets, yards per game, and yards per route run. Aaron Rodgers' end of season quote regarding Alan Lazard was, quote unquote, by the end of the season, he was called upon many, many times in important situations to make big plays, and he did. He was just a great teammate and ascending player. Loved his approach each week, and he made some big time plays for us.
He did make
Assuming
some big time
Lazard
plays.
sees the field early and often, he will contest uh, against one of the softest schedules of defenses that the league has to offer. Green Bay's start of season is week 1 at Minnesota, Week 2 versus Detroit. Week 3 at New Orleans. Week 4 home against the Falcons. Week 5 is a bye. Week 6 is at Tampa Bay. Week 7 is at Houston, and Week 8 is versus the Texans. I'm buying Lazard late in drafts with the anticipation of early season usage against these teams, and he can be somewhat of a flex start for deep teams.
I definitely understand that. Look,
Wait, I
personally,
gotta celebrate real quick. Fuck yeah, Brandon Allen, cash that out. Let's go. Big bet, bro. Big bet. But
I
continue.
understand that. Look, we all grind sometimes on these DFS things, so I definitely
Yeah, man.
understand that.
That was a huge bet, man. If you could see these two kids look like blood, sweat, and tears of just American gladiators from like the 1800s. But continue. Bet we're on a fantasy football pod, not a MMA show.
We're all good. All right. So as far as Alan Lazard, my question is there really value to find in the Green Bay wide receiver 2 slot? Like we know
I
Devontae
mean,
Adams
man,
is
I just read off the beginning of that season, man. That's a really
there.
appealing
It
schedule.
is, but here's the thing: Matt LaFleur as the head coach, I just feel like he doesn't want to give the ball to Aaron Rodgers as much as we would expect him to, and
Okay.
we saw it by how run heavy they were, not only, just in general with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams and how much work they got, but um, in the red zone too, where Aaron Rodgers has always been the touchdown machine. Aaron Jones ate up red zone work and had, 16 touchdowns on the ground. Um, and all these people are going to make those arguments, oh, that's due to come down. But no, it's like when you have a great red zone quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, teams are planning for that. So it just makes Aaron Jones' job easier. And, in this sort of situation where, like, if I had to pick a wide receiver for Green Bay, it would be Alan Lazard without a doubt. Like, I don't have any confidence in Devin Funchess. Marquez Valdez Scantling, I feel like he had his opportunity and it's kind of come and gone. Um,
I feel what
Beyond
your
that,
question is. It's just how valuable is the Green Bay wide receiver 2 going to be compared
right.
to history in the
Yeah,
past? It's not what it's going to used to be back in the day when we saw Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson. But if
right.
he can hit the floor of anything of what they can do, he's going to be a top 35, top 40 receiver, and he's going what, past the 10th round in dynasty startup drafts.
He's Dynasty startups. I know for a fact he's going to be on the 10th. I'm looking at best ball drafts for 2020 right now. Alan Lazard is the 64th wide receiver off the board.
See, that's the exact reason why I have him as a sleeper. He's not finishing the 64th receiver off the board. No
Right.
way.
So he's the 13th pick in the 16th round, which, I mean, that's basically undrafted at that point. So
He's another person by August. His ADP is definitely going to jump up once
I
people
think
start
so.
doing more and more fantasy podcasts.
More hype, definitely. All right, so we're gonna head into tight ends now. I know, not the sexiest thing to talk about, especially in fantasy football, and I would even argue that, if you're gonna go with any sort of tight end strategy, I would argue for early tight end because you can basically bank on George Kittle and Travis Kelce to be great this season. But if you're not getting one of those two, and you gotta have the right draft spot in order to get one of those two,
I would say the only
then
reason why I would draft them that high would be if I did a tight end premium league. Other than that, I feel like the positional drop off between George Kittle and Travis Kelsey's ADP, where they're going in the second and third round, is not. I would rather take the skill position players and just take tight end shots because they're easier to address later on in drafts because a lot of tight end busts happen in the middle of drafts, and that's where I feel like a lot of fantasy gamers fall themselves in the trap each year in year out of drafting mid-round tight ends. Like for example, last year, if you were a person that drafted either Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry, or David Njoku, you got burned hard last year.
Definitely. I just want to say this though, that both George Kittle and Travis Kelce averaged 16.5 fantasy points per game, and last season that would have ranked them as the wide receiver 8 in average points per game. So they're kind of, depending how many wide receivers and all are off the board, I think they have earned sort of that
Respect.
that respect to be drafted there, and you know what you're getting. You're not, like you said, taking these shots on these later guys and then having them not pan out and kind of just try and find whatever off the waiver wire. You actually have a legitimate option there. But like I said, like you said, with the middle round tight ends, it really never works out. For me personally, if I can't get one of those two guys, I'm going to be looking to take shots later on in the draft. One of my favorite guys to take a shot on is Hayden Hurst, but the thing is that the hype is going
ADP's
up around
jumping.
Hayden. Yeah, people are buying into the Hayden Hurst juice right now, and I can't. I at some point he's not a sleeper anymore. Like if you're being drafted to be a starting tight end, you're not a sleeper. So I wanted to go into Ian Thomas here, wide receiver, or I'm sorry, tight end for the Carolina Panthers. Uh, First of all, Greg Olson is gone, so the
Post hype
path for
sleeper. Ian
post type
Thomas.
sleeper, because people were buying into Ian Thomas before when Greg Olson was there
Cam
still.
Newton was the quarterback back then. Yeah, 2 years
Yeah,
ago when he got drafted.
and people were just so excited. Oh, if Greg Olson, either leaves or gets hurt or whatever, things are going to happen for Ian Thomas. Last season, I have to look it up. I know Greg Olson did get hurt. However, this is my main argument is going to be that this is a completely different team, and that the situation that Ian Thomas is coming into is just it's just not the same. So last year, Greg Olson played 14 games, by the way, so it's kind of hard to base it off 2 games. So I'm not going to really base anything off last year. However, you have a big time upgrade at quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. From Kyle Allen, I think it's pretty easy to say that that's
Yes,
a big
yes, yes.
upgrade. Teddy, by the way, loves the short passes. Now we have on this team Christian McCaffrey, who is probably the best running back in the NFL. At least in the receiving game, he most certainly is. And at that point, he's going to eat up a lot of short targets. So is DJ Moore, who I believe, as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver for this season, will definitely eat up a lot of the short targets. But whatever targets that are short that don't go to those two, they're most likely going to Ian Thomas. And I know it's kind of hard to buy into third in the pecking order, and he's not necessarily third in the pecking order because Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel are still going to be on the field, and I think the coaching staff is going to encourage Teddy to take shots. But sometimes quarterbacks just play how they want to play, and this is a low end tight end right here. Like this isn't, I'm not telling you Ian Thomas is going to come out and be George Kittle. But if Ian Thomas can come out and be pretty relevant, and sort of get like a 5 for 50 line each week, or, maybe like even just 2 for 20 and a touchdown, like he will pay off for your team. He'll just be, I'm not saying he's going to be a top 3 tight end with that sort of upside, because I don't really see that happening with the options that Teddy Bridgewater has around him. But for the price you're paying, you're taking a shot on a guy who has the opportunity to come in and be a key contributor for his team and a key contributor for your fantasy team. Right now, 2020 best ball drafts averages I have to switch over to tight ends very quickly. Ian Thomas is the tight end 20 off the board, going in the 15th round. So, there's probably some other sleepers I would probably prefer over Ian Thomas, but this is kind of like you're dead in the water. All you've waited till the very, very, very end of your draft, and you got to take a shot on someone. I think Ian Thomas is the guy.
I can dig it. I can dig it. The guy that I'm gonna. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Ian Thomas?
No, definitely. Go ahead.
The guy that I want to talk about is Dawson Knox, tight end for the Buffalo Bills. Dawson Knox had an up and down rookie season filled with a lot of good and bad moments too. Knox's elite athleticism for the position. He had 3.5-inch vertical and a 4.54 40-yard dash, which is well above average for the position. His athletic profile compares to tight ends in the past of the names of Kyle Rudolph and Travis Kelce. The third-round pick found his way onto the field with 28 receptions for 388 yards and 2 touchdowns. Knox finished second among all rookie tight ends in yards, only behind first-round draft pick Noah Fant. A quarter of his catches went for at least 20 yards. That was one of the NFL's best rates, only behind Jared Cook and Blake Jarwin. The bad thing about Dawson Knox was he had one of the worst drop rates for tight ends last year, only catching 10 of his 38 targets. For someone 6 years ago who was a quarterback, the progress is legit. My favorite stat line about Dawson Knox would be that he was third in yards per reception at the tight end position. He's got elite athleticism and appears to be someone who will work his tail off to get better. And where his ADP is right now, I definitely think there's value in a trending up offense led by Josh Allen.
I can definitely dig that. Dawson Knox right now is the tight end 26 off the board in the 18th round of best ball draft. So basically undrafted. And you look at the guys that's going around him. Greg Olson's going before him, and I just don't necessarily see that upside for him. Jay Sternberger, who basically missed his rookie season last year. Gerald Everett going right after him, and he's not really projected to be the starter. Kyle Rudolph, definitely not going to be the fantasy relevant guy on his team. Will Disley and David Njoku. So there's a lot of question marks around him, but Dawson Knox is a guy who's going to be on the field. And, like Josh Allen loves to take those shots downfield. Dawson Knox is a kind of athletic tight end option that, you can make the argument where, you check down with Cole Beasley, right? Cole Beasley is probably not getting more than 5 yards after the catch on any given catch. I mean, obviously, if he's wide open for whatever reason, then he will. But most times, if a guy's within range, he probably isn't getting a ton of yards after the catch. But Dawson Knox is a guy that could definitely, catch a 10-yard pass and just break a tackle and then take it to the house. So that's kind of the argument that maybe you could make for Josh Allen as to a reason why to like Dawson Knox. And yes, drops are something to dislike, but
I think it's one of those
rookie tight end
stats that I think it's one of those stats year to year that I'm very interested in because it's very rare that you see the same amount of the same names at the top of the drop list. It's usually a type of stat that is just a random year to year stat. And those people that are on those lists have a chance of coming back. Remember the other day when we talked about my case for Odell Beckham Jr., you said you weren't really too high on him. And I said one thing that I liked about him was that he basically led the league and dropped like deep targets. If they connect, if those people that are dropping all those passes, if they connect on a couple more, those stat lines look very, very different by the end of the year of where they finish at the end of the season.
They do. And like I said, I think it's kind of just more of a rookie tight end thing where like TJ Hawkinson had a ton of drops too. And it's like, you see them getting open, you see the talent there, but it's just kind of something's just not clicking. We've kind of assessed that for years now with rookie tight ends, where like
Hard,
it
man. I think that's the hardest position to play in the NFL besides quarterback
it's
offensively.
it's definitely the hardest transition, and it's kind of confusing to me. I mean, I guess it's just because you can
Dude,
basically
you have
do.
to learn. You have to learn the role of blocking like an offensive lineman, but also have the receiving skills of a wide receiver. Hence, why a player like Mike Gesicki, who has the athleticism out the wazoo, the receiving skills out the wazoo, but the kid can't block, so he can't get in on the field all the time because he can't block. Like it's a really weird situation that tight ends have to learn in the NFL. It's definitely one of the hardest positions to translate. Hence why you
Right.
see so many people start breaking out third, fourth year tight ends once they learn more about the role of the position in the NFL. It's
Right.
not a type of position that you can compare college stats from.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. All right, guys. So to recap this show real quick, sleepers that we talked about: Tyrod Taylor, Jarrett Stidham. At running back, we talked about Chris Thompson and Tariq Cohen. At the wide receiver position, we talked about Emmanuel Sanders and Alan Lazard. And then at tight end, some shots that we talked about: Ian Thomas and Dawson Knox. Billy, I've had a great time tonight. Is it? I mean, I don't really want this night to end. Do you?
No, man. I'm excited. Nice little UFC card going on right now. So definitely nice talking to you, Rob. A little bit of a
Oh yeah, definitely.
unannounced podcast, but aren't those usually the best one? I
Oh
really do
yeah,
like the logo for the people that are viewing this
yeah. Is
visually.
there a way I can show just? I think there should be a way I can show just us. Hold on. Nope, not that one. Nope, not that one. Yeah, but if I could show you, I mean, you can go to our Twitter at Dynasty Force Pod, and you can check it out there, the logo. Yeah, shout out to at Fantasy Dukes on Twitter for doing the logo. I thought it came out very clean, and the way that it compares to the rest of the fantasy forecasters, it's not the exact same, which is we wanted it to be a little different, but you could definitely look at it and be like, oh, I can tell they're from the same family. So definitely love that. Yeah, I like I said in the last pod, I would work on the presentation, and I hope for all of you that we fix that. The show did stream live to our YouTube, so the episode will be available immediately on YouTube. It's going to be Dynasty Force Podcast on YouTube, Twitter. You can find this podcast on Periscope. It's at Dynasty Force Pod. You can follow me on Twitter at Fantasy Force FB. You can follow Billy on Twitter. Um, Hold on, let me turn off this banner real quick so I can. Sorry for taking forever. There you go. At getting underscore bills underscore. Um, yeah, follow us on Twitter, and then uh, I am in the. So I've uploaded the podcasts to Anchor, so they are in the process of being distributed across to multiple sites now: Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Currently, to this point, I think it's really only available on Google Podcasts, but these podcasts are in the process of getting uploaded. This one will get uploaded, and hopefully, it won't take this long because I think I did it on Tuesday, or I'm sorry, Thursday, because we recorded on Wednesday. I think I did it Thursday or uploaded it Thursday and sent it out for distribution. So hopefully, it doesn't take this long in the future. I think it's just a sort of one-time thing where it's taking as long as it's taking. But Billy, I really hope you win $1 million tonight because I know if you do, I'm due for some money because I was here with you.
Sounds good to me.
Definitely. I'm about to hit the hay because I am an old head, and over here on the East Coast, is almost 10 o'clock. So
Got work
that's
tomorrow?
I have work at night. So I don't really have a reason to be so tired right now, but I'm gonna blame my fiance who will never sleep in for anything. um, it's as someone who loves sleep, it's one of the most annoying things
Yeah.
being engaged to someone who hates sleeping in. Like
Yeah.
love her to death, obviously, but God,
For
I mean,
better or
like,
for worse.
right, like I need my sleep. Come on now.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode of Dynasty Force Podcast. This is your host, Robert Mantuano. Checking out at Fantasy Force FB on Twitter. Come give me a follow. Come give the show a follow at Dynasty Force Pod. And Billy, my co host here, at getting underscore bills underscore. Also, if you have any questions, want to have us answer some questions for you on the show, send your questions in dynastyforcepod@gmail.com. We're really open to all sort of reviews or criticism or anything we can do to make the show better for you guys. Send them in to our email because we made this email for a reason because we want to listen to you all and see what we can do better for you. So Bill, I don't have anything else to say. You want to say anything else to the people?
Nope. See you people. See you guys Wednesday.
See you Wednesday. We're gonna have Chris Robin on the show. It's gonna be live.
Detroit Beastie. We
Detroit
gotta
BC.
have Detroit Beastie on because the PGA Tour is in Detroit this week, so it's only right.
It's only right. We will see you then. Catch us live on Twitter and YouTube at 8, or I'm sorry, it's going to be earlier in the day, so it's going to be 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. Thanks a lot, guys. See you then.